Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. This is a story about what if Deku became a police officer. If you guys enjoy this movie, comment down below and let me know before I start. Please do support for more awesome content. And leave a like, and don't forget to subscribe to my channel, and also share this video with your friends, and check out the description in my playlist. The author of the story, Redpandaxredpanda from AO3. So let's start the video. I guess what they say about your heroes is true. Chapter text. You'll make a perfect skin suit for me to hide in, kid. It was a normal day for Izuku. Normal until a sludge villain showed up. Before Izuku had time to react, slime surrounded and suffocated him. Don't worry, kid, I'm just taking over your body. Izuku's vision started to fade. Was this how he died? A worthless Deku who dreamt of being a hero but in the end couldn't even save himself. However, before he could completely blacked out, he heard a loud voice. Smash. Have no fear, now that I am here. That was the last thing Izuku heard before everything went black. All Might. Izuku was a bit confused when he woke up to All Might slapping him awake. I thought I lost you. Sorry about that back there. All Might. All Might. Izuku's favorite hero, Japan's #1 hero. Right in front of him. The hero who just saved him. This had to be one of Izuku's greatest memories to date. Right next to the day he learned who All Might was, and the day he found an exclusive limited edition Silver Age All Might figure. He found it in a thrift store when it was no longer in production, and also at a fraction of the original price. Autograph. All Might, could you please sign my notebook? Izuku picked up his notebook, still damp and damaged from Kaken's quirk. He quickly tried to flip to the next blank page. You already did. Thank you so much. All Might's signature was written boldly across 2 pages. No problem. Now if you excuse me, I have to get this guy to the police. All Might gestured to the capped water bottle that held the sludge villain. It was a bit surprising that it could all fit in there. Wait a second. There's no time to start muttering about theories. All Might just said he was leaving. Already, All Might couldn't go. Izuku had a lot of questions for his favorite hero. Before Izuku knew what was happening, he leaped and latched onto All Might's leg. What do you think you're doing? Let go. If I let go, I'll die. Izuku already regretted his actions, but there was no backing down now. That's a good point. All Might started to fly slower and flew down to the top of a building. Izuku thought about his dream to be a hero and how everyone supported him until the day he found out that he would never have a quirk. That day was probably his worst memory. All Might. Izuku started. Is it possible to become a hero even if I don't have a quirk? Could I ever hope to be someone like you? Izuku gained the courage to look at his hero. Wait, what the foo? Where's All Might? I assure you that I'm All Might. You know those guys at pools who are always flexing and sucking in? All Might went on with his strange metaphor that barely processed in Izuku's already overstimulated brain. This had to be some weird dream Izuku's brain concocted, or that slime villain left some goo in Izuku's brain. See this scar? All Might lifted his shirt, exposing a healed wound. This was caused by a villain a few years back. Toxic Chainsaw. Ha, you're your stuff. But no, this was a more powerful villain. The rest of the conversation was a blur to Izuku, except for this next part. Izuku remembered these words very clearly. This job isn't easy. Some villains just can't be beaten without quirks. You can't be a hero without a quirk. Each statement felt like a stab in Izuku's heart. Listen, kid, it's just not realistic to be a hero without a quirk. There are other options out there if you want to help people. For example, being a police officer. All Might's words seemed to fade as all Izuku could focus on was without a quirk. Without a quirk, I can't be a hero. Without a quirk, others will think you're useless. Suddenly Izuku remembered the words Kaken said to him earlier. If you want a quirk, go take a swan dive off the roof and pray you'll have one in your next life. And so after All Might left Izuku on the roof, he jumped. But Izuku didn't die. Instead, he woke up with a sharp inhale. It felt like he just woke from a nightmare, but it felt so real. He looked around his room, stuffed to the brim with All Might merchandise. Looking at the merchandise made him feel a bit queasy. Although it was just a dream, it felt so real. Izuku got out of bed and got out notebook number 13 from his book bag. No burn marks and no signature from All Might. What a terrible nightmare, Izuku thought to himself. He thought about what happened in his dream. What he was thinking when he jumped off the building. What would his mother think? How sad would she be if he left her? Izuku made his way down to the kitchen. Morning, Izuku. I was just about to leave for work. I left breakfast on the. A sharp snap echoed through the room. Izuku turned to see his mom's heel holding onto the rest of the shoe by a thread. Darn, I really liked this pair. Didn't those shoes break yesterday? Or did they break in last night's dream? What a weird coincidence. Mom, are you okay? I'm fine, just surprised, but I better hurry or I'll be late. Izuku's mom quickly grabbed a different pair of shoes before excusing herself out of the house. School was interesting. Izuku found that a lot of the material that was said was a lot like the material gone over in his dream. In his dream, he worked on hero analyzes in his notebook. However, after checking it today, he forgot to put it back into his backpack and couldn't work on his analysis today. But I know you all want to go to the hero track. Sheets of paper filled the room as cheers broke out from the class. Weird quirks were shown off in the class. 𝗧𝗂. At the sudden call of his name, 𝗧𝗂's attention was pulled towards his teacher. You want to go into UAS hero course as well? Correct. Before 𝗧𝗂 could stop stuttering, Kaken interrupted. Stupid Deku, you think you can make it into UAS hero course? You'd be lucky if you're able to step through their front gates. Right after the bell rang and 𝗧𝗂 grabbed his bag and left. Although it was just a dream where Kaken told me to jump off the roof, he didn't think that he could handle being told that again. He quickly ran off and left through a different exit than where he usually goes. He hurried home in a hurry rather than his usual leisurely walk. He wanted to get home ASAP and have this day be over. Unfortunately, his plan was interrupted by a sludge monster. Didn't have to wait a long time at all for a perfect skin suit to come my way. Slime oozed out of a sewer vent. Before 𝗧𝗂 had time to regret his decision of going home in the same direction as in his dream, slime filled his throat and lungs. 𝗧𝗂 flailed and uselessly tried to grab handfuls of slime. Useless, quirkless Deku. 𝗧𝗂's dream was so close to reality that he regretted not taking a different route home. Or better yet, not go to school at all. But in his dream, didn't All Might save him? Today, however, he left school rather quickly and avoided his talk with Kaken. Would All Might be fast enough to save him? What was 𝗧𝗂 thinking? Of course, he will. He always saves everyone with a smile on his face. Those were 𝗧𝗂's last thoughts before he blacked out. After that, 𝗧𝗂 woke up with a sharp inhale. Not one weird dream but two. Or should he be calling them nightmares now? The first dream, All Might crushed his dreams. In the second, he never showed up at all. Instead of the All Might merch in his bedroom only making him feel a bit queasy. He wanted it out of his sight. The dreams, were they even dreams? 𝗧𝗂 just wanted it to be tomorrow already. He didn't want to get out of bed. He continued to lay down for another moment, trying to savor the warmth before sluggishly getting out. He slowly headed down to greet his mom. A snap echoed. Oh darn, I really liked this pair. Sure enough, 𝗧𝗂 saw the heel of the shoe barely hanging on by a thread. 𝗧𝗂, I didn't hear you come in. Gosh sweetie, you look terrible. How are you feeling? Oh, you know, I was gaslit by Kaken to kill myself. Got told that my dream of being a hero will never happen by All Might, and this day keeps repeating. I think I may be sick. Was all 𝗧𝗂 could reply. A worried mother's face is something you never want to see. She felt 𝗧𝗂's forehead and replied, try and get some sleep. I'll call the school. 𝗧𝗂 nodded his head and headed back to his room. He laid back down in his bed. 𝗧𝗂 pondered about what the hell was happening. He died. He was sure he died twice. As much as he didn't want to admit it, he jumped off of that building. He did jump, and there was no denying the feeling of being unable to breathe and suffocating to death. He couldn't mistake that for a dream. But so what did he die? What did it mean? Was this purgatory? Some weird delusion? Someone's quirk at work? Quirk. A light bulb suddenly went over his head. He got out of bed and he brought out a new notebook. He opened it and wrote what he knew. The ability to redo the day. Was this 𝗧𝗂's quirk? Did 𝗧𝗂 have a quirk? 𝗧𝗂 was reminded of that pre-quirk era movie Groundhog Day, where the day would repeat. But maybe, instead of no reason, perhaps the day repeats whenever he died. As a true quirk analyst, many ideas swarmed his head as well as muttering. What if I die exactly at the moment where the day resets? Would I endlessly die? Is there a limit to the number of resets I have? If I change the same day enough, do butterfly effects occur? Is death the only trigger to redo the day? Or is it possible just to activate it by wanting to? Unfortunately, most of these theories would stay theories. No amount of curiosity would allow 𝗧𝗂 to test out these theories. Right, 𝗧𝗂 may have thought that a side effect of dying may have made him go crazy. But instead of thinking rationally, he sat in a bathtub nervously holding a toaster that was connected, extension cord that was connected to a plug. His pajamas loosely floated in the water. All Might said it himself, you can't be a hero without a quirk. This was to prove he had a quirk. He could prove that he wasn't some useless Deku. With this quirk, he could be a hero. If this quirk was what he thinks it is, he could gain dangerous information or do jobs that would be suicide for other heroes. He could gain information about the future just like 𝗧𝗏. He just needed to be sure that this was his quirk, not an illusion and not a dream. Let's make this the best day ever. Chapter text. Oh darn, I really liked this pair. 𝗧𝗂's mom started to put a different pair of shoes on. 𝗧𝗂, I'm leaving for work now. Mom. 𝗧𝗂 appeared with his blanket wrapped around himself. I don't feel so good. My baby, what's wrong? 𝗧𝗂's mother's face was filled with worry. It's seldom that 𝗧𝗂 comes up to his mom and complains. The last thing on her mind was that 𝗧𝗂 was lying, which he was. I think I'm sick. 𝗧𝗂 threw in some stifling coughs for good measure. Just stay in bed today and get some rest. I'll call the school and pick up some medicine on my way back. 𝗧𝗂 may be pretending to be sick, but in reality, he was feeling better than ever. He had a quirk. He didn't feel good lying to his mother. However, 𝗧𝗂 probably wasn't feeling the best either. After all, he did die 3 times. But 𝗧𝗂 was determined to make this day the best day ever. He deserves it. Previously, today was the worst day of his life. However, with a powerful quirk, what's there to fear? After waiting to hear his mom leave, Izuku got to work on making today the best day ever. Izuku dumped the contents of his backpack on the ground and instead put his wallet, a new notebook and pen, and his phone into his bag. Izuku made his way out the door. First stop, Katsuden for breakfast. Izuku sat on the bus that headed towards the mall. On the bus, Izuku pulled out his notebook and pen. He wanted to write about his quirk. However, before Izuku got to writing, he was already stuck on what he should title his book. What would he call this notebook? My Quirk Analysis. But if anyone found this book, he would have to explain how he found out about his quirk. Even if he lied, would they still be suspicious? What about if he just wrote the name of his quirk? If anyone asks, I can just say it was a hypothetical quirk. That does raise another question. What should he name his quirk? He opened to the first page and wrote Redo. Izuku wasn't the best at coming up with names, but this name did suit the quirk. It wasn't a flashy name like other hero quirk names, but his quirk wasn't flashy. It was powerful. The power to redo something. How many things in your life would be better if you had the power to redo one thing in life? What if you had the power to redo things multiple times until the most ideal situation occurred? Under the word redo, Izuku wrote another word, weaknesses. Like all quirks, there were still things that this quirk couldn't do. For example, preventing a natural disaster, or being limited to one's own capabilities. If Izuku is in a situation where he keeps dying to a powerful villain and he is unable to avoid the battle, unable to defeat the villain, and unable to get help, then he would endlessly be stuck dying to the villain. Izuku wrote down every weakness he thought of. It didn't make upset that his quirk had a lot of weaknesses. After all, many other hero quirks were the same. No one was invincible. Everyone has strengths and weaknesses. Soon Izuku arrived at his stop and made his way to the restaurant that contained the best katsuden in Japan, next to his mother's katsuden, of course. Entering the restaurant, a waitress came up to Izuku. Welcome, table for two. Just one. Izuku suddenly felt a tad embarrassed to eat alone. The waitress brought Izuku to a small table. Do you need a menu? I'm fine. I'm ready to order. Just a katsuden. All right, one katsuden. She wrote in a small notebook, before looking up. Anything else? No. Izuku shook his head. The waitress hummed before asking, is there no school today? I just saw another boy your age. For some schools. Izuku trailed off. He wasn't just about to tell the whole world he was skipping school. Izuku watched the waitress leave to the back of the restaurant. However, his eyes were drawn to another corner of the restaurant. A few other customers were gathered around one of the tables. Piles of eaten dishes were stacked around the table. A cameraman and tripods were set up to film. It looked like some sort of food-eating contest was going on for a video or stream. Izuku thought that mukbang videos were faked, but it now looks like that isn't the case for everyone. Izuku looked at the two competing against each other. One was a guy with short brown hair, the other was a girl with her hair in two long pigtails. The guy looked like he was about to throw up before admitting defeat. The crowd of people started to disperse. The two streamers were saying some pleasantries and started to conclude their stream. One person from the crowd, however, walked towards Izuku instead of going back to their seat. It looked to be a boy around Izuku's age. He wore a black baseball cap. Do you want to do that? Izuku was a bit surprised that the boy started to talk to him. Be a streamer? Izuku questioned. No. Do you want to have a food-eating contest? Many questions entered Izuku's mind. This enigma in front of him wasn't making any sense. The boy in front of him continued. I want to eat soba. You can eat soba without having a food-eating contest with someone else. Izuku was a bit lost for words. No, that's not what I mean. The boy went on to explain to Izuku that his sister would be upset if he ate too much soba. However, if he were to tell his sister that he was with a friend, she would be too happy to care about his unhealthy eating of abnormal quantities of soba. Izuku thought that this boy's thinking was a bit of a reach. You could just lie and say that you were with a friend. I don't want to lie to my sister. That's fair. Izuku didn't feel good about lying to his mother this morning. Also, if he was caught playing hooky by his mother and told her he was with a friend, she would probably cry of happiness as well. If that's not enough, I can just pay for both of our meals. I don't care about the money. The boy also added, all right, I'll have a contest with you. Izuku eventually agreed. However, instead of you paying, let's have the loser pay for both of our meals. This was supposed to be a fun day for Izuku. And what's more fun than a food-eating contest? Izuku was confident in eating katsuden. However, Izuku quickly found himself regretting this decision. 24 bowls of katsuden later, Izuku surprised himself with the amount he ate. Maybe he secretly had a quirk that let him eat endless amounts of katsuden. However, he was starting to feel sick. The boy across from him still looked like he was faring well. But would Izuku admit defeat? No, never. Izuku may no longer be able to taste katsuden and may never want his favorite meal again. But he would not admit defeat. and the only reason why was due to not bring enough money to pay for both meals. How was he supposed to know this boy was a bottomless pit for soba? How was he supposed to know he was one too? Izuku thought this was going to be the perfect chance for a free meal. Instead it won a one-way ticket to being in debt. Why did Izuku have to open his stupid mouth and make it a contest? He should have just let the boy pay for both their meals. Was it too late to redo this day? At the start, they agreed that 2 soda orders would be equivalent to 1 bowl of katsudon. The boy across was slurping his 40-second bowl of soba without breaking a sweat. Izuku kept on chomping away. How long has Izuku been eating katsudon? Where was he? Who was he? Was this worth the pain? More bowls piled around them. Their contest seemed to attract more attention than the original food-eating contest pair. The boy across from Izuku suddenly turned green. Seeing the boy across from him look agitated, Izuku wanted nothing more than for him to give up. Izuku's silent prayer seemed to work as his competition admitted defeat. I can't believe someone could eat more than me. I can't believe I would ever be sick of soba. The boy turned his attention to Izuku. Does this make us friends now? Izuku was more confused than ever. It didn't help that he felt like he was about to enter a food coma. How does eating a lot of food and being friends correlate with each other? Izuku was still lost but was able to muster up a few coherent sentences. Sure, should we exchange numbers? Izuku passed his phone to the other boy and watched him type his name and phone number in. It was the first time he really looked at his new friend. Hiding under the baseball cap was white and red peppermint hair. His eyes were also mismatched. Izuku's phone was handed back to him. Izuku read the name on his new contact, Sodo. Izuku felt like starting the supposedly best day of his life with a food-eating contest may not have been the correct way to start, but he did have a good time. He avoided being in debt to his favorite restaurant, and he also gained a new friend. Izuku decided to make his way out of the restaurant before he was stopped by the streamers he previously saw. Hello. The twin-tail girl started the conversation first. We overheard that your friend was inspired by our contest and you made a contest of your own. Izuku was dumbfounded yet again by the amount of people approaching him today. He nodded. We were wondering if we could put your food-eating contest on our channel. It's a small channel. Izuku was a bit shocked, but somewhat recalled them also asking during the competition with Sodo. If it was a small channel, not a lot of people would see it. What harm could it cause? Izuku agreed but asked if his face could be censored. The two agreed and said that they often would add cute drawings with different expressions over people's faces. After Izuku finished speaking with the two, he set off to his next destination, the hero store, and a hero hater chapter text. The next location Izuku would go is the place where most, if not all of his allowance would go. Izuku walked through the door, even more excited when realizing the store was newly stocked. However, excitement was quickly replaced when All Might merchandise entered his eyes. Izuku didn't want to purchase any more All Might merch, but he still had heroes he liked. Maybe he could look around and try to find a new favorite. He walked through displays and aisles. Well, if not the number 1 hero, maybe the second. Endeavor. Nope, no way. Rumor has it he abuses his family. He also is the hero with the most casualties. What about number 3? Hawk. If you say he's your favorite, it's the same as saying that the commission is your favorite hero. Alright, what about number 4? Well, how would anyone know if he's any different from the rest of these heroes? If Izuku got a new favorite hero, what's stopping them from also saying that quirkless people can't be heroes? What's stopping them from saying Izuku can't be a hero? Izuku made his way between aisles. Usually this place is filled with kids, but since most of them are at school and not skipping, it was empty at the moment. He looked at some cosplay merchandise, Snipes' hat, President Mike's jacket, and also unnamed hero merch. Unnamed hero merch is mostly companies trying to make a profit by selling off-brand hero merch or generic hero merch to avoid copyright or having to pay another company for using their hero's name. Most of the items have names like a hero's cape or superhero gloves. Most are just there to make an extra buck, but some are actually underground hero merch in disguise. A lot of the time the merch replicating the underground heroes would be shut down to help keep the hero's identity a secret, but this never stopped some from entering production. In a pile of Hawk's sunglasses were a pair of goggles labeled Yellow Hero Goggles. The design was pretty unique. Yellow goggles with the frame covering the lenses with stripes. Pretty neat goggles, right? One of the employees started to talk to Izuku. Being talked to by strangers seemed to be a recurring theme today. This is just between you and me, but I heard these goggles is supposed to be based on the underground hero, Eraserhead. The employee said. Eraserhead. Izuku knew a little bit about underground heroes. However, Izuku did not know this particular one. Never heard of him. What's his quirk? Dunno. He's an underground hero for a reason. Izuku suddenly was lost in thought looking at the goggles. Fanboying over an underground hero seemed to be a better choice than a normal hero. There won't be company creating fake images for the heroes. Underground heroes wouldn't be fighting for the spotlight. And best of all, it was unlikely that you would meet them and get your dreams crushed. Do you know if there's any other Eraserhead merch? Izuku only learned about the hero less than 20 minutes ago, but was now walking out of the store with 2 pieces of Eraserhead merch, goggles and what looked like a pile of bandages. Izuku felt like the employee was just trying to make a buck off him and he was caught up in the moment, but the employee also gave Izuku a hero tote bag to hold his new purchases, so maybe Eraserhead is really a real hero. Leaving the store, Izuku didn't really have a plan about where to go next. It would be nice to just walk around and try to digest all the katsudon he's eaten. Maybe he should have asked Sodo to hang out with him longer, but it didn't matter now. Izuku was still determined to make this day great. Izuku decided to push thoughts of All Might and dying behind him. He was wasting daylight. Izuku's eyes were caught by big shiny lights and bright colors coming from a store, an arcade store. Not a lot of people were there since school wasn't out yet. Maybe a few oddballs and people on dates were there. The store gave an inviting vibe without being overwhelmed with people. Izuku seldomly went to arcade stores. He wasn't a big gamer fan and arcades were a bit outdated compared to other games. But the novelty and old-school vibe did add to the appeal, as did being more of a pre-Quirk era item. Izuku walked up to one of the arcade machines labeled Pac-Man. He put his hero merch on the ground and took off his backpack to get some quarters. Putting the coin into the machine, Izuku started to play. It was a bit difficult since Izuku rarely played arcade games. After losing his second life, out of the corner of his eye he saw a teen with blue hair walk up to the arcade machine next to Izuku. Izuku ignored him and continued to play. What the hell do cherries do? Why are the ghosts suddenly all blue? Tusk. The blue-haired teen beside Izuku suddenly clicked his tongue. Izuku looked over to see his hero merch bag fallen onto the teen's foot. Oh, sorry about that. Izuku was about to grab the fallen bag when the teen instead grabbed the bag with his hand. Izuku thought he was going to hand the bag back. Instead, the bag turned into dust, letting the hero merch drop to the floor. The blue-haired teen looked at the kid in front of him. He expected Izuku to run off crying. That's so cool. Izuku beamed at the blue-haired teen. Is that your quirk? What's the range? Can you change how fast you disintegrate something? Izuku began to go into quirk analyst mode before the blue teen interrupted him. You aren't scared of me. You do know that I could easily kill you using my quirk. PSH, it'll take a lot more than that to kill me. Izuku, suddenly reminded of his own newly gained quirk, felt a bit happier. He beamed and smiled at the blue-hair boy. The brunette, on the other hand, looked at Izuku like he was an idiot, who's crazy enough to smile when threatened. Whatever. The teen, lost for words, changed the subject. Wanna play Street Fighter? Izuku lost to the blue-haired teen many times. The other teen didn't seem to mind though. Maybe he just liked beating others in video games. But after Izuku died again, the teen spoke to Izuku. Heroes are the scum of society. You shouldn't waste your time on the likes of them. Izuku was stunned by the sudden start of conversation, but couldn't stay silent when heroes were being slandered. Not all heroes are like that. Oh, so you admit some are scum. That's at least better than other NPCs. There's many great heroes. Like all. Izuku froze mid-sentence. Izuku was going to say All Might. It was almost muscle memory to say he was a great hero. But is he? All Might saved a lot of people. He saved Izuku from the slime villain. Right. But Izuku also died to the slime villain and died after All Might left him on the roof. All Might crushed Izuku's dreams. His confidence in the hero wavered. Izuku changed what he was going to say. There's many great heroes, like underground ground heroes. They don't care about the spotlight and they do dangerous missions that other spotlight heroes wouldn't dare to do. Underground heroes. I guess Eraserhead isn't that bad of a hero. You know Eraserhead? Izuku perked up at someone else mentioning this hero. Yeah, the blue-hair boy added another quarter into the arcade game. He's different than those other trash heroes. Izuku beamed. If this hero hater liked Eraserhead, he's definitely a better choice than All Might. Do you know what his quirk is? It's the ability to erase quirks. Izuku was even more excited. Eraserhead's quirk was similar to Izuku's. Both weren't flashy, but they were powerful. The two boys hung out for a little longer before the older boy told Izuku he had to leave. Izuku regretted not asking for the contact information of the blue-hair boy. He didn't even get a name. But at least the teen told Izuku that he was often at an internet cafe if he wanted to meet up again. Izuku was pretty satisfied with his day out. Izuku didn't think anything noteworthy happened, but it was satisfying enough to forget about the alternative ways this day could have gone. Izuku was ready to go home. On the bus back home, Izuku looked out the window. A lot more people were on the bus coming back from school or work. Izuku still had time to get back home since his mother would get home late due to her working. Izuku looked out the window of the bus. They were passing Takoba Municipal Beach. Looking past the fields of trash, the view of the sun was setting was beautiful. It was a shame that although Izuku redid the day 3 times, he was only able to see today's sunset once. Many things happened to Izuku today. He wasn't sure if it ended up being the best day of his life, but if Izuku had to redo the day again, there would be nothing he would change. When Izuku returned home, he changed back into his PJs, took off his backpack, and slid his newly purchased hero merch under his bed. When he heard his mother come home, he went back to his bed. "Izuku, are you awake?" Izuku's mother peeked into Izuku's room, whispering, "I'm awake. I'm also feeling a lot better now." "That's good. I went to buy ingredients to make your favorite katsudon." Izuku paled. "Yup, it'll be ready soon." "Izuku, what's wrong? You look like you're about to throw up. Do you need to stay an extra day at home tomorrow?" "Izuku, your stalker-like habits are starting to show." Chapter text. After Izuku rejected eating katsudon for dinner, his mother was more worried about him and insisted he stay at home tomorrow and not attend school. This worked in Izuku's favor. Once his mom left for work, Izuku was able to do some redecorating, removing all the All Might merch from his room and putting them online to sell. He was also able to do some research on Eraserhead. Not a lot of information was available due to him. However, in proper stalker fashion, Izuku was able to compile a few videos and stories about Eraserhead. All of them didn't contain Eraserhead's name, but the lack of quirks being used in battle and Eraserhead's signature goggles and scarf was a pretty big giveaway. Although Izuku knew Eraserhead's quirk, without the goggles Izuku purchased it wouldn't have recognized the hero. The videos Izuku was able to find had Eraserhead using his scarf to attack. This made it seem like the scarf was part of his quirk instead of a support weapon. It also didn't help that there were videos of him fighting against mutant-type quirks. Izuku wrote this off as Eraserhead's quirk being unable to work against mutant-type quirks. Izuku wrote everything he could find and the theories he had about the hero in his hero analysis for the future number 13. Since both Eraserhead and Izuku had quirks that needed them to fight quirkless in battle, Izuku originally wanted to use the underground hero as a stencil to develop his own fighting technique. However, Izuku quickly learned that this wouldn't be realistic after watching Eraserhead fight, at least not at his current level. Eraserhead was much stronger and agile than Izuku, with years of experience under his belt. Not to mention Izuku wouldn't have access to support gear like Eraserhead's scarf, a key component to how Eraserhead fights. After getting his quirk, Izuku was more determined than ever to improve himself. Getting into UA and becoming a hero didn't seem like that far away of a dream now. Looking at the videos of heroes, Izuku felt like he was trying to run before he could walk. He needed to build strength and learn basic techniques on how to fight. Izuku went downstairs to grab some small dumbbell from the closet. However, they were a bit too light for building strength. Izuku suddenly remembered the beach he saw on his way home. Cleaning the beach would make the perfect training regimen to build strength. Every day until the day of the entrance exam, Izuku cleaned the beach, did extra strength exercises, ran. Another thing he did was study fighting techniques and learn more about underground heroes. Many videos on underground heroes included ex-vigilantes who later became professional heroes. For example, the Crawler was a vigilante who later became a professional hero. However, the amount of videos about underground heroes and vigilantes were limited. Not to mention Izuku prefers analyzing and learning in person. That's why it also became a common occurrence to dress in all black and sneak out in the middle of the night. Fridays were Izuku's favorite day. It was one of the only days he knew Eraserhead's patrol route from beginning to end. Izuku was on a roof tucked in between large transportation crates. He wore black cargo pants and a tight black long-sleeve shirt. He wore a black beanie and black surgical face mask. He also had a small black bag clipped around one of his legs packed with his notebook, a pen, a snack, and small knife. He didn't see the need to bring the knife. After all, if he got into a dangerous situation, what was the worst that could happen? Izuku dies and he has to redo the day. Izuku was laying on his stomach waiting for Eraserhead to pass by this part of his patrol. Izuku took out his snack and started to eat it. Today he brought a jam sandwich. Going out to watch underground heroes fight was much more boring than it sounds. Most of the time Izuku was just waiting for an underground hero that may not even show up. Izuku was still eating his snack when Eraserhead ran by. Izuku was relieved that Eraserhead came and didn't decide to go in a different route. But rather than relieved, he was more excited that Eraserhead had company, chasing what looked like a man with a mutation quirk resembling a crab. Izuku wanted to quickly take out his notebook and pen but was still holding the sandwich. He shoved the bread in his mouth to hold the sandwich and brought out his pen and notebook to write. Eraserhead swiftly took down the villain. It took a bit longer since he didn't use his scarf, probably so it wouldn't be cut by the villain's crab claw. Eraserhead knocked him out and tied him in his scarf. Izuku was in awe. It wasn't every day that he would be able to see Eraserhead take down a villain. Eraserhead moved out of the street near the build Izuku was. It wasn't until he was directly under Izuku's hiding spot did he stop. Crap. Did he spot Izuku? How did he know Izuku was here? Eraserhead pulled out his phone to make a call. Izuku sighed in relief. The call was to the police station, probably due to the villain or to report immediate damage that occurred that needed to be attended to. But maybe Izuku was relieved too soon. The sandwich Izuku was holding in his mouth slipped out and started to fall. Izuku silently panicked, reaching down hoping to catch it before it fell. However, it was too late. Izuku couldn't do anything except look down as the sandwich slowly fell down. Izuku ducked his head out of sight. Maybe Eraserhead would just think that half-eaten jam sandwiches falling out of the sky was a normal occurrence that didn't need to be looked into. Maybe he wouldn't see Izuku and just forget about the whole ordeal. Maybe he would all hypothesize Izuku had were stalled when he saw Eraserhead jump 5 stories from the ground all the way up to the floor where Izuku was. Izuku could have sworn his life flashed before his eyes. Eraserhead landed on the building. He blocked Izuku's only way out, leaving Izuku's back towards the edge of the building. Izuku pulled up his face mask, praying Eraser didn't see his face. Izuku was considering redoing the day. He could have jumped off the edge. It wasn't until he saw Eraserhead's hair float and his eyes turn red that he decided to reconsider. In Izuku's mind, he always believed if a situation where he's caught spying on heroes, he could redo. He forgot that his new favorite hero's quirk was the perfect counter to Izuku's plan. Eraserhead, sorry, I was just eating a late supper and you know who I am. Eraserhead sounded more curious than confrontational. Using the underground hero's name was probably the wrong choice, but Izuku was in full panic mode, muttering and rambling on about everything and anything. Yes, but a lot of people know who you are. But 2 random strangers I met at the mall also knew you. Now you're saying I'm bad at my job. Izuku now wished he could sew his mouth shut. No, you're a great hero. The Eraserhead sighed and released his quirk. He didn't see the need to be so aggressive towards a child. Listen kid, you shouldn't be out here this late. I'll take you home. The scene was a bit reminiscent to Izuku. Izuku being on a roof with his favorite hero. Eraserhead, do you think someone like me could be a hero? No. I'm going to be taking the entrance exams for UA soon. Aren't you a teacher there? Did someone at the mall tell you that too? Eraserhead looked down at the kid in front of him. Although this child hid his hair in a beanie and hid his face behind a mask, it was pretty clear that he was just a kid. Maybe even a bit shorter than the kids in his class. A bit annoyed that his identity has somehow been compromised enough for a random kid to know who he was, he still answered Izuku. I once expelled my entire class on the first day because I didn't think they had what it takes to be a hero. Just because you pass the entrance exam doesn't mean you can be a hero. Izuku was silent, waiting for the hero to continue. There's a lot more to being a hero than asking someone whether you can or can't be one. Lots of people told me that I couldn't be a hero. But your quirk is so powerful. Izuku couldn't help but interject. Eraserhead snorted. It takes a lot more than some quirk to be a hero. Izuku let that sentence sink in. He was about to be escorted back home, but while Eraserhead was distracted with Izuku, the crab villain tried to flee. When Eraserhead noticed, he left Izuku on the build to catch the villain again. In the moment of chaos, Izuku was able to slip out and make his way home. When Izuku came home, he slipped back into bed, hopefully somewhat catching up on his sleep. His bed felt extra warm that night. Entrance exams chapter text. Finally, it was the day of entrance exams to UA. Izuku was confident in the written test. For the practical, he prepared the best he could. He packed on muscles. He was faster. He also got better at silently moving around and hiding from stalking underground heroes. However, he was still nervous. He even tripped. Thankfully, a brown-haired girl helped him with her gravity quirk. The gravity-defying quirks was flashy and powerful. She definitely seemed like the type that would become a popular hero in the future. Izuku saw her right before the practical was going to start. He wanted to approach her and thank her. However, before she even acknowledged him, another student with glasses stopped him. Can't you see she's trying to concentrate? Why are you trying to bother her? Izuku was a bit lost for words. He tried to defend himself, but he was interrupted by President Mike starting the exam. Izuku took a deep breath. He cleaned the entire beach. He ran. He studied and practiced fighting techniques. However, no matter how hard he tried to train, no matter what he did, everything he did was pointless when President Mike announced what the practical was. Robots. President Mike explained the rest of the instructions, but Izuku tuned them out. He was screwed. The buzzer sounded and the gates opened, starting the beginning of the exam. What are you waiting for? There are no countdowns in real battles. President Mike yelled out. Kids ran past Izuku, bumping into him. Other kids with more flashy quirks were able to avoid the crowd, bypassing the other kids. Izuku steadied himself as he tried to run up front as well. Large robots started to approach the students. Izuku felt like just the wind from them moving would topple him over. Izuku's training could at best allow him to dodge and avoid. However, taking down a robot is unlikely. Many kids jumped up, not wasting a second, using their destructive quirks, lighting, acid, and super strength, just to name a few. Izuku finally saw the flaws and limitations of his quirk in action. Even if he redos the day and knows what's going to happen, it doesn't help him if he can't prevent it from happening. Izuku stopped running. His feet felt frozen to the ground. He felt like he was back to useless Deku against these robots. Anything, something, just 1 point. Izuku just wanted to take down one robot. But how? Izuku was smart. He really was. But in this moment he couldn't think of anything. Use scrap metal from other robots. What good would that do? Try and fight the robots head on. That would just be a death sentence. 2 minutes left. Izuku looked around. All of the robots around him were quickly being taken down. At this rate it will be impossible for Izuku to get into UA. The training on the beach, the running, watching and copying other underground heroes. But everything Izuku did be for nothing. Izuku guessed it would have been impossible to change himself after only a few months. Why did Izuku think he wouldn't be a Deku even after getting a quirk? Kaio, the brown-haired girl who helped Izuku, suddenly screamed. Izuku turned to look and saw the gravity quirk girl on the ground. A 0-pointer was approaching fast. At this rate she'll be crushed. Izuku's legs instantly moved. Please, Izuku begged. Please be fast enough to save her. Izuku didn't have a plan when running towards her, but he wouldn't leave someone who needed help alone. Izuku ran with his arms in front of him, and before he even thought of what he was doing, he pushed the brown-haired girl out of the way. All Izuku saw after that was black. Did he at least save that girl? Izuku stared at the ceiling of his room. He died again. However, with the adrenaline in his body, it was less of a painful death than his previous experiences. Izuku made his way downstairs to the computer. He searched entrance exam robots UA, entrance exam robots UA, purchases large amounts of robots UA robots. Izuku searched for multiple things, maybe a weakness, some sort of helpful tip, an alternate way to pass. Izuku was grasping at straws, trying to find a way to pass and get into the hero course. Izuku, what are you still doing at home? Isn't UAS entrance exam happening today? Izuku looked at the time. Surely enough, he was going to be late. You're right. I'll see you when I get back. Izuku made his way out the door and back to UA. This time he wasn't surprised about how grand the place was. Previously he was certain he would pass the written, but now he had full confidence he aced it. But what about the practical? Could he really pass it? He thought back to what Eraserhead said. Just because you pass the entrance exam doesn't make you a hero. The same should apply if he doesn't pass it either. Izuku finished the written exam early. When he handed the exam in, he asked one of the people watching over the exam, "Excuse me, do you think it's possible to change what course I want to go into?" "You want to try and get into the hero course?" "No, I want to switch to the general course." The man in front of Izuku looked surprised. Most kids' dream is to become a hero. It's a little last minute, but it shouldn't be a problem. You can skip the practical and fill out some forms. I'll guide you. The man stood up. All right. Izuku followed the man and went through the proper procedures. Izuku was free to go home, but he didn't. Izuku still had to save that brown-haired girl. If Izuku didn't interfere, would she be saved? He died in the practical. What's stopping someone else from dying as well? He needed to save the girl, but he was too weak. Students who finished the exam early started to trickle out. One of the students Izuku recalled as the dark blue hair and glasses boy. He was strong, taking down the robots definitely enough to get into the hero course. Izuku walked up to the boy. "The engine's on your leg. You'll probably be able to save someone with how quick you are." "I sure hope so. After all, we are aiming to become heroes." The blue hair boy started to make a strange chopping motion with his hands. Izuku thought for a moment for the best way to get this boy to help. "I have a quirk similar to foresight. A girl with a brown hair is going to get seriously injured in the practical." "Why are you telling me? If this is actually a serious matter, shouldn't you tell one of the heroes? The entrance exam isn't a place for jokes." Izuku clenched his jaw. The heroes wouldn't believe him after checking what his quirk is registered as. Then would you believe me if I knew what the practical exam is? Izuku wasn't sure if this stickler for rules would listen to him. He was a bit confused why Izuku didn't ask someone else. But at the end of the day he wanted to help people and told Izuku he would keep an eye on the girl. Izuku waited by the gates until the exam was over. Izuku saw the brown-haired girl and the boy with glasses both walk out together. Sighing in relief, Izuku went home. Somewhere else in UA, the teachers were gathered around watching the entrance exams. Everyone was deeply immersed until their concentration was broken by someone entering the room. "Ewasa, it's rare that you want to at the entrance exam." The rat-like principal was first to acknowledge Eraserhead's entrance. "I thought I would see something interesting." Nezu's interests perked. "Well, keep watching. It looks like there will be a few interesting students this year." "All Might, what about you? Anyone that catches your eye?" Nezu turned his attention to the #1 hero. Young Bakugo is definitely impressive, scoring second overall with only villain points. First place is obviously impressive as well, many rescue and villain points. Not to mention his elder brother is also a very successful hero. All Might responded. "However, don't you find it a bit weird that throughout the exam Tenya Ida was looking at the girl he saved? It was also as if he was waiting for her to get hurt." Another teacher brought up this point. "He definitely would have earned a lot more villain points if he ignored her." Do you think it was planned and that Ida knew about the rescue points? You said it yourself that his brother was also a hero. He could have told him. Different heroes started to join the conversation. Before it got out of hand, Nezu put a stop to it. Ho, you heroes are thinking way too much. There is no chance that they could have known or have met each other before today. I'm certain of it. Nezu had a gleam in his eye. None of the teachers knew what Nezu was thinking in this moment. That explains a lot. Chapter text: It was a long day figuratively and literally for Izuku. He gave up his chances of becoming a hero. No, that was a lie. He gave up trying to get into the hero course. However, there is definitely another way to make it into the hero course. After all, Eraserhead himself said that he didn't pass the practical exam, which makes sense since robots have no quirks to erase. It would still take some time for the results of the exam to come in as well as the new school year to begin. Izuku therefore spent more of his time training, practicing how to fight, and nighttime hero watching. Izuku learned a lot from eavesdropping on underground heroes. Izuku felt like his luck was out of this world to not have been caught yet. However, even if he did, he could still redo the day as a last resort. This particular night, Izuku wasn't waiting for Eraserhead or any other underground hero. Instead, he was looking for the newly debuted hero, Mount Lady. Izuku learned that she was assigned to a night mission. A bit strange since she would have to fight practically quirkless to avoid drawing attention. But it was perfect for Izuku to see more quirkless fights. In proper stakeout fashion, Izuku was tucked inside a vent hole in the side of a building. His snack of choice today was a banana. Izuku upgraded how he did his stakeouts, now bringing books or his phone to watch videos with subtitles. It took a bit of effort to figure out a way to hide the light from his phone, but it was worth the effort. Izuku was watching the 8th season of Friends, a pre-quirk American show. It was interesting, but not enough to keep Izuku's attention from hearing a shriek in the distance. Izuku started to run towards the direction of the voice. Izuku didn't know what he was going to do but needed to help. Izuku ran and saw a man pointing a gun towards a woman. Izuku didn't think, he just ran and tried to kick the gun out of the man's hand. He didn't drop it, but the gun did go off in a random direction. Suddenly he felt a blunt object hit his head. Izuku turned to see the woman behind him. Her face warped into a smirk and her hand warped into a mallet. Izuku was tricked by this pair. They were probably working together to rob others or bring down heroes. Izuku's head was spinning from the hit but still trying to get away. If no one needed help, there was no need to put himself in danger. Unfortunately, the duo didn't stop there and chased Izuku the moment he decided to run. Caught up in the moment, Izuku threw the rest of the banana he still had in his hand at the thieves. If you asked anyone, they would say this action was done in pure desperation. However, in an act of pure luck, the man slipped on the banana peel. He lost his balance, but not before his gun went off, shooting Izuku right in the back of the head. This was definitely Izuku's most comical death. When Izuku regained consciousness, he quickly sat up in his bed. What a terrible way to go out. At least no one was there to witness his foolishness. Izuku got out of bed and headed downstairs. If he remembered right, his mother should be sitting down at the dinner table. Sure enough, there she was, her hair tied up and wearing the same clothes as Izuku's remembered. However, there was a slight difference between this day and his previous redo. Green glowing letters were displayed over her head. It was strange. The words above her head read object attraction, and when Izuku focused more on the letters, it changed to a description. Allows user to pull small objects towards them. Confusion filled Izuku's head. Was this another quirk at work? Why could he suddenly see his mother's quirk? Izuku suddenly wanted to swat his hand over the letters. Was this an illusion? A sudden thought occurred to Izuku. Could he see his own quirk? Izuku turned around and headed to the bathroom and looked in the mirror. Above his head was green text that read, Redo. Izuku focused on the quirk Redo. New text appeared and read, upon death, allows user to go back to when last unconscious. Next, Izuku focused on the bottom row of question marks, allows user to see the name and a short description of someone's quirk. Izuku decided to test this newly found quirk, internally naming the quirk to be analyzed. Sure enough, the names displayed changed. Redo. Analyze. It appeared that the most recent quirks were located at the bottom and the oldest quirks at the top. But if that was the case, then Izuku's original quirk isn't Redo. Izuku focused on the quirk at the top of the list. Allows user to gain a quirk upon death. The birth of a hero. Chapter text. Izuku was currently sitting at Takoba Municipal Beach Park. After cleaning it, it was much more beautiful than expected. A lot of other people also started to come and enjoy the beach as well. However, instead of enjoying the beach, Izuku was in a state of shock. Was there such a quirk that allowed someone to gain multiple quirks? Wasn't this a little too powerful? Izuku watched other people pass by the beach. All of them had green text over their heads. Ice shards, metallic, shock absorption, bat wings. Izuku brought out his cell phone and looked at his reflection. Looking at himself, the green text was still lit up above his head. Redo. Analyze. Izuku decided to focus on the other question marks above his head as well as think of some suitable names for his quirks. He was able to come up with Redo concealment hair dye thread. Analyze. Izuku realized his concealment quirk was probably the reason he didn't get caught spying on other underground heroes. The quirk hair dye didn't seem very useful for hero work or unless Izuku planned to dye his hair sometime soon. As for the quirk thread, Izuku was much more curious. He bit the tip of his finger, drawing a bead of blood from the wound. Izuku focused on the blood. Izuku wondered if he was just being delusional that he had multiple quirks, but the blood droplet quivered, slowly extending to become thinner and longer. Izuku was shocked and excited but tried to collect himself in order to keep the thread. Izuku was able to create a small thread from the top of his finger. It was probably not more than a couple inches in length, but nonetheless, Izuku was able to use this quirk and produce thread. When Izuku returned home, he was over the moon. So many new quirks to analyze, and they were all his. He could do as many experiments as he wanted. Izuku went to the bathroom to try out his other quirk, hair dye. Izuku focused on his hair in the mirror, trying to use the same feeling as he got when using the thread quirk. Izuku tried to turn his hair red, but nothing seemed to occur. Izuku mentally tried to clear his head and maybe try something a little closer to his natural hair color. Izuku focused again and his hair slowly shifted from his original dark green to a lime green. The shift wasn't instant, but it wasn't slow either. The speed of this quirk may change with practice. It was only Izuku's first time using it after all. Once his hair was light green, Izuku didn't need to focus on it to keep it light green. The first major flaw or disadvantage Izuku found was that the quirks tended to have a learning barrier to it. After all, people spend years to perfect even one quirk, much less multiple ones. But it may get easier as Izuku learns to use multiple different quirks. There's probably some overlap. For example, if he obtained 2 ice quirks, the ways to control and use them would probably end pretty similar. Izuku shifted his attention back on his quirk and no longer on rambling under his breath about theories. Shifting to other colors became much easier once he started to get the hang of it. Turns out a quirk to change one's hair color isn't extremely difficult to control. Experimenting with different colors, red, blue, and purple, Izuku was have fun playing around and experimenting with the limitations of the quirk. He also tried to do a gradient, purple roots and pink tips, but Izuku couldn't hold the ombre and it quickly faded to only purple. Izuku could feel that multiple colors was definitely achievable, but he just didn't have the skill to make it work. Speaking of multiple colored hair individuals, Izuku was reminded of Sodo. Maybe he should contact him to hang out one day. Izuku changed his hair to his original color and returned to his room. It was a lot more plain now that all of his All Might merch has been sold. Izuku laid back down on his bed. Should he try and gain more quirks? He could keep dying until he gained a powerful quirk and then register it as his real quirk. Izuku decided to hold off on dying for now. It was not particularly fun dying, and it always best to train and develop the fundamentals. He instead snuck out of his room to practice fighting. Hand-to-hand combat without quirks is a must to fight villains. After all, if a villain has a quirk like Eraserhead's, all the quirks Izuku have would be worthless. Also, since Izuku is registered as quirkless, he needs some sort of way to stand out from his peers and be accepted into the hero course. Izuku was suddenly motivated to train. Although the beach was already clean, he could practice some combat moves. In the beginning, Izuku was a bit embarrassed to practice. Although he has been watching fights in battle, he still felt a little awkward and silly to practice. When he first started, he decided to dress in all black, head to toe, and also wear a black face mask. Now Izuku just felt like it was the norm to be dressed like this whenever he practiced. Izuku started to warm up at the beach. A few people passed by but wasn't close enough to closely look at Izuku or think of him as suspicious. Izuku hypothesized that it may also be due to his concealment quirk. Although others weren't paying attention to Izuku, Izuku was doing his best to be more aware of his surroundings, scanning while also trying to fight. Knees slightly bent, his feet apart and his hands raised. It was a fighting stance that seemed to be used by heroes who either has a strength-enhancing quirk or where their quirk was rendered useless for a fight and had to fight quirkless. Izuku tried some new moves from a new underground hero he was watching a few days back and variations of the moves. It would probably be a bit helpful to have a target of partner to help him out, but that's something he'll worry about later. Suddenly, out of the corner of Izuku's eye, he saw a man talking to a student in her uniform. They weren't close enough for Izuku to hear what was being said. It looked normal at first, but then the man started to get closer to the girl and swipe at her. It was clear now that the man was intoxicated with the way he moved off balance. The girl looked frightened and tried to take some steps back. It seemed to anger the man even more as he went to grab her arm. "Hey, what the hell are you doing?" Izuku ran up to block the drunk man from the student. "Come on, we were just talking." The man's words were clearly slurred. "Clearly, you need to get your eyes checked. She's not interested. So why don't you just leave and not make a fool of yourself?" Izuku didn't know where this bout of confidence came from but was pleased to not stutter through a single word. "You asshole. You better watch your mouth. You better leave her alone," Izuku replied. The man's face twisted before deciding to swing a punch at Izuku. Time for him to put his skills to the test, he thought. Using a jiu-jitsu move, Izuku blocked, grabbed, and threw the man over and onto the ground. It looked like those nights of practicing paid off. The fight was over quickly and the man scuttled away. "Thank you so much. Are you a hero?" The student turned their attention to Izuku, clearly mistaking Izuku as some sort of underground hero or D-list hero who was out of costume. "Oh, Izuku was about to say he wasn't a hero. But if he admitted to not being one, would he be considered a vigilante? But then again, theoretically, he was quirkless and therefore couldn't be charged for acts of vigilantism. He didn't even use a quirk. Only if there was a lesser-known hero who he could pass as. They would have to be a hero who could be mistaken as quirkless and who dresses in all black. "Oh wait, my hero name is Eraserhead. Please get home safely." Izuku smiled. Izuku didn't know how Eraserhead would react to some kid stealing his name, but it probably wouldn't be a positive reaction. But Izuku was filled with glee. That girl mistook Izuku as a hero. Could Izuku really work as a hero? Get his license and save people? But was that necessary? Why wait? Izuku could be a hero now, just not legally. That day a vigilante was born. Vigilante work endeavors chapter text. Izuku, the letter from UA came. Izuku was coming back from his morning run. His mother called him. "Izuku, your letter came. Quickly open it." After Izuku told his mother he applied to the general course instead of the hero course, his mother definitely became a lot more supportive. The hero course was just too dangerous for her baby to enter. Izuku had bittersweet feelings towards his mother babying him. Izuku took the letter. It was a simple letter in an envelope. He wasn't as excited as he thought he would be. He looked at the result. "I was accepted." "That's great news." Izuku's mother grabbed Izuku into a big hug. Izuku hugged his mother back, but he was already thinking about something else. Tonight Izuku was going out. Not to spy on underground heroes, but to act as a hero. The black clothing he usually wore was good enough to use as a hero costume. However, did change a few things. Replacing Izuku's black surgical mask was a gas mask. One of Izuku's weaknesses would be falling unconscious. If he were to run into a hero like Midnight where her quirk would put her opponent asleep, Izuku wouldn't have the ability to redo. Now with the mask, this wouldn't be a problem. The gas mask also hides his face and somewhat distorts his voice, which is an added bonus. Izuku also decided to use his hair dye quirk. He first wanted to change his hair black, but in the night his hair being black or green would appear almost the same. Izuku decided to go in the opposite direction instead, changing his hair color to pure white. The first few times Izuku went out, there was absolutely no crime. The streets were basically empty, even in the more dangerous parts of town where heroes barely crossed. Maybe an occasional drunk or two, but nothing major. Izuku was a bit disappointed in the lack of crime, but also relieved that nothing bad occurred. Izuku was walking around aimlessly. The night was quiet. Izuku opted to go a different route than the area he planned to patrol. Soon he found himself in the middle of the city. He changed from walking on the ground to jumping from roof to roof, staying hidden with his concealment quirk. The night was beautiful. In the distance he could see 𝗵𝗲's agency. It stood out due to being one of the tallest buildings in the area. If he stood on a tall building like that, he would be able to see the bright lights of the city. Izuku made his way over. Izuku remembered that when he was younger he took a tour of 𝗵𝗲's agency. Since no crimes were happening, he decided to head over. There's little to no chance Izuku would run into a crime near a hero's agency where there's heroes everywhere. Maybe a stupid criminal if anything. The building was tall. If Izuku could find a way to get to the top, he could probably see the entire city. Just as Izuku was trying to think of a way to get up there, he heard a voice. "Hey, what the hell are you doing loitering around here?" Izuku turned. Just Izuku's luck to run into the number 2 hero. "What the hell are you doing? There's no way you're supposed to be patrolling here." "Sorry, I'll be on my way then." Izuku glad that the number 2 hero just thought of him as some low-tier hero. Someone not worth his time or worth remembering. "Hold on, show me your hero license." "Fuck." Maybe Izuku spoke too soon. My hero license. One moment. Izuku pretended to look in his bag, then did a pat-down of his person. "I think I must have dropped it somewhere patrolling." Haha. Izuku looked up at 𝗵𝗲. He wasn't buying it. Izuku turned immediately and started to put his running skills to the test. Hopefully 𝗵𝗲 didn't care too about chasing some small kid playing hero. However, the heat Izuku felt on his back told a different story. According to the rumors, his kids and wife aren't even safe from abuse. How could Izuku be spared? The further Izuku ran, the more unfamiliar he was with his surroundings. Izuku turned into an alleyway. A wall blocked his way, a dead end. Izuku turned around to face his pursuer, his heart pumping. He raised his hands in front of him. He didn't want to die. He used the quirk thread. red strings emerging from his fingertips, but lamely fell to the ground. 𝗵𝗲 smirked. I was wonder what kind of quirk a fake hero like you had. Guess it was nothing special. 𝗵𝗲 grabbed the threads, burning them to soot, then set Izuku on fire. The heat was painful. Izuku felt like he could only breathe smoke, not to mention the distinct smell of his flesh roasting. Izuku just wanted to hurry up and die. Izuku woke up in his bed and tumbled out, breathing hard in and out. He felt a cold sweat starting. Remind Izuku to never die by fire. He collected himself and headed to the bathroom. He splashed water in his face and looked in the mirror. Izuku almost forgot that each time he died he gained a quirk. He looked at the description of the new quirk. Allows user to use telekinesis on objects when in direct contact with that object. It seemed to be a bit of an oxymoron or a bit useless. He immediately wanted to test it out. He took his toothbrush and placed it in his hand. Izuku focused on the object, keeping his arm still. He was able to slowly bend the toothbrush, touching the brush to the end by only using his mind. Izuku did a few other tests. He was able to circle objects around his wrist without moving any part of his body. He could fold a shirt just by touching a sleeve. He could have objects stick to himself. Of course, he could do anything when not making contact with the object he was trying to move. Izuku went in full analyze mode. If he stacked objects on top of each other, could he move them? Would he be able to fly if he wore shoes and used his telekinesis quirk? Izuku put a pair of socks on and tried to use his new quirk on them. He could definitely feel the pressure up against his feet. He was able to lift himself where the tip of his toe was barely touching but never completed off the ground. Most of it had to do with feeling unbalanced. It almost felt like trying standing with two kickballs attached to your feet. Maybe with more practice Izuku would be able to use this quirk to hover or even fly. But best of all, Izuku learned he could combine quirks. Using threads in conjunction with touch telekinesis allowed him to control the threads coming out of his fingers, similar to the same way as how Eraserhead controls his scar. He could work with this. So this is love. Chapter text. It has been a few weeks since Izuku has died to 𝗵𝗲. Dying has never discouraged Izuku from being a vigilante at all. He could feel real progress from fighting with real criminals. He felt confident with his new identity as a vigilante. Izuku was in love with being a vigilante. Helping people, defeating villains. Hell, he was even able to help a hero once. He loved where no one knew him as useless Deku and where he could be anything he wanted to. A few things have changed since Izuku first started being a vigilante. Izuku decided to stop using Eraserhead's name for vigilante purposes. Izuku, or read by his vigilante name, has made a bit of a name for himself, at least known by people he has saved and the few heroes he has pissed off. Izuku uses both his thread quirk and touch telekinesis as a means of attack against his opponents, similar to how Eraserhead uses his scarf. The combination of the two quirks also is what caused Izuku's vigilante name, Red, mostly due to the red color of the threads. Izuku also got some other quirks from a few mishaps that occurred during his vigilante activities. His new quirks were Night Vision, Weak Spot, Freeze, Tag, Cube. Izuku wasn't that creative with his names, mostly because Izuku had a feeling he would need to name a lot more in the future. Tonight Izuku was patrolling and walking around like usual. A little further away from Izuku, Hitoshi Shinso was walking alone outside. Hitoshi was a boy similar to Izuku's age. It was his dream to become a hero, but he wanted to get there with his own power, not by being recommended by his dads who were both heroes. He wanted to become a hero with his own power and his own quirk. Hitoshi suddenly felt eerie, like someone was following him. He turned a few corners to confirm his suspicions. Hitoshi knew that he should probably secretly call someone or go somewhere where there's more people. But in that moment Hitoshi was pissed. Was it those assholes from school? When he spoke to them, would they call him a villain again? Hey asshole, why the hell are you following me? Hitoshi turned around to face the stalker. The stalker was double the height of Hitoshi. He wore a kind of helmet made of sand. It mimicked a pharaoh's head. They were definitely not one of Hitoshi's classmates. Sand particles were floating around him and his feet for every step he took. Hitoshi was nervous about the lack of speech from the other person. Nervousness was replaced by fear as a sickle made from sand appeared in the other's hand. Hitoshi decided to change his plan and started to run. Unfortunately, the pharaoh villain ran after him. Do you think going after the weak makes you powerful? Hitoshi called out behind him. What did I ever do to you? Why are you chasing me? Fuck. Anything, just say anything. It doesn't even have to be a word. Hitoshi decided to give up on trying to use his quirk and saved his energy to run away instead. Eventually the ground below him turned to quicksand. It wasn't like the movies where he instantly sunk, but it was difficult to run. The villain behind him was catching up to him. The heroes will be here soon. Hitoshi, knowing that he wouldn't be able to outrun this guy, tried to get this guy to talk again. Cat's got your tongue. Or are you scared of heroes? Hitoshi was nervous. This guy wouldn't speak no matter what Hitoshi said. Hitoshi really hoped that a hero would come soon. Suddenly, like a ray of hope, a hero appeared. white hair, dressed in all black and a gas mask covering his face. Hitoshi sighed in relief. Hitoshi assumed that this was an underground hero with how he was dressed. This villain seemed very powerful. Hitoshi hoped that the hero who came was powerful as well. From Izuku's perspective, the villain definitely was powerful. However, there wasn't a battle he could lose. If the purple hair boy died, he could redo. If he died, he would just redo and try and save the purple hair kid again. If he couldn't do either of those, he would just find another hero. Izuku could clearly see the villain's quirk at use but used his analysis anyway. Izuku was more confused after looking at the villain's quirk. What did enhanced mean? Was it by another quirk user? A drug? Izuku decided to think about it later. His threads is a bad matchup against this villain who could easily block it with sand. Izuku opted for freeze tag combined with cube. Izuku threw out a few punches and kicks. They were all blocked by shields made from sand. Izuku jumped up and activated his cube quirk around the villain. Falling down, Izuku needed to make contact with the cube in order to activate frost to freeze the box and the villain. However, his plan was quickly foiled by his cube turning to sand. Izuku suddenly felt like an idiot, but somehow everything worked out. The villain was distracted by the cube and couldn't see Izuku landing right behind him. Izuku was able to grab the villain directly and freeze him, turning him into a statue of ice. The fight was dangerous, but at least it ended quickly. Izuku noticed another hero nearby checking on the purple hair kid. Izuku wanted to run away quickly. Heroes were always bad news for a vigilante. Unfortunately, the hero turned to face Izuku before he could leave. Your quirk is really powerful. What agency are you from? The hero asked. Izuku recognized him as a hero's sidekick, Kaido. Purple Revolution Agency. Izuku lied. My phone was damaged in battle. Could you report this for me? Also, I think this villain was under the influence of something to enhance his quirk. Izuku thought back to what he read when using analysis. Izuku turned to the purple hair boy he saved. Are you alright? I'm fine. Thank you for saving me. Can I ask what your hero name is? Izuku was surprised of how nervous the purple hair kid was. His face was a bit red, but Izuku didn't think about it too deeply. This kid was just face to face with a villain. Not to mention, Izuku was more concerned about the other hero who was currently taking care of the villain. After all, he was a vigilante, an illegal hero that should be put behind bars. Izuku didn't want to risk the other hero recognizing his vigilante name. It's better be safe than sorry. Well, I'm Eraserhead, Izuku replied. But I'm an underground hero, so don't go telling your friends about me. Izuku inwardly apologized to Eraserhead for using his name again. However, in Izuku's defense, the only hero he knew that was associated with the Purple Revolution Agency is Eraserhead. Not to mention, he used a totally different quirk than the one Red is supposed to have. The purple hair kid just kinda stared at Izuku. Izuku, feeling a bit awkward, decided to continue. Izuku thought of a way to slip out before the police or more heroes show up. I'll escort you home so you get back safely. Right. The boy seemed a bit dazed, but was still able to start walking back to his house. Izuku remembered his first villain attack, the slime villain. He was so out of it, he couldn't blame the kid for not being all there. The walk was quiet, but the purple hair kid suddenly spoke up. Your hero name is Eraserhead? Yeah. Oh, I see. Izuku was a bit confused why this boy asked about this again. Maybe he was in shock and didn't process what Izuku said. Peeked at the purple hair boy. His eyes had deep bags under his eyes and looked to be around Izuku's age. What was most surprising was his quirk, brainwashing. It was a powerful quirk that would be great for hero work. However, Izuku's thoughts of what it could be used for were interrupted. My house is just up ahead. Alright, stay safe, try not to go out this late again. Izuku waved goodbye then left. When Hitoshi entered his house, his father, or President Mike as many other know him as, spoke to Hitoshi. Hitoshi, where in the world have you been? Hitoshi's father had his blonde hair in a low casual bun with a baggy shirt sporting an indie band and sweatpants. I was with Eraserhead. Shouta. I thought it was his day off today, but he isn't at home either. Sigh, he's too much of a workaholic. Hitoshi. Another voice came from the couch interrupting the two's conversation. Hitoshi made his way over, peering over the couch. Dad, what are you doing behind here? 𝐬𝐽 was lying on the ground wrapped up in his signature yellow sleeping bag. You were home this whole time. How come you didn't say anything when I asked you to clean Muffin's litter box? 𝐬𝐽 was looking over the couch beside Hitoshi to see his lovely husband on the ground. That's not important right now. I wasn't with Hitoshi. Our son is trying to pull a fast one on us. 𝐬𝐽 replied. Fine, but we're talking about this later. 𝐬𝐽 turned to his son. Well, clearly you weren't with your dad. I didn't say that. I said I was with Eraserhead. Stop talking in riddles and cut to the chase already. 𝐬𝐽 said from the ground. Hitoshi decided to leave out the part about being attacked by a villain and instead just said, I saw a hero and he said his name was Eraserhead. But he did look a bit different from the Eraserhead I was familiar with. He dressed in all black, had white hair, and wore a gas mask that covered his face. Hitoshi watched his dad's reaction. Red, that son of a bitch. A problem child. Chapter text. 𝐬𝐢 Aizawa was a hero by the name of Eraserhead. However, recently another so-called vigilante has been using that name. That vigilante wasn't even an adult, just some kid who's gonna bite off more than he can chew one day and cause trouble. Aizawa, a case you were involved in yesterday included a villain using trigger. Did you write the report for that yet? Yesterday? Yesterday was my day off. Huh, then what's this report? Aizawa peered over at the statement passed to him. He suddenly realized what happened, spoke with his teeth clenched. Red was like a thorn in Aizawa's side, using his name for illegal activities, causing more paperwork for him to do. Red didn't spare him at home either. After Hitoshi met Red, Hitoshi wouldn't stop asking Aizawa about updates on Red and how he was doing. It was almost like it was Aizawa's fate to be bothered by Red at any and every moment of his life. Speaking of the devil, Aizawa saw Red during his patrol. If Aizawa didn't know any better, he would have thought Red knew his patrol route. But that would be crazy, right? Red, not only are you illegally using your quirk for vigilante work, but you're also using my name again. Eraserhead. Great timing running into you. I have a thief tied up just in the other alley, and now I need you to capture them both. Aizawa could only imagine the smug smile behind Red's gas mask. Red, or should I say problem child, when are you going to stop making trouble for me? As for Eraserhead's and Red's relationship, the first few times they met, Eraserhead tried to capture him. As for why Eraserhead decided to stop trying to capture Izuku, it may be due to giving up trying to chase after him, or due to finally recognizing that Izuku can take care of himself and low-key respects Red's work. It's probably the former, but Izuku can dream. Red, I may not be arresting you, but other heroes won't be as kind. Aizawa added, you seem pretty young, why don't you apply to UA? I'll also write you a recommendation letter. Eraserhead still thought that Red wouldn't agree and continued. You wouldn't have to let anyone else besides me know your vigilante identity. As a teacher and a hero, I can let you enter if you pass the recommendation exam. Eraserhead considered telling Red this for a while. While there were programs to get vigilantes hero licenses, Red couldn't be much older than the students in UA. He could definitely persuade that darn rat to do this. Izuku may have considered it for a moment, but he couldn't bring himself to agree. After all, his identity as Red allowed him to use other quirks without suspicious. Not to mention his current identity didn't have a quirk register. Izuku really wanted to find the perfect quirk to register as. In Aizawa's eyes, Red has a powerful quirk suitable for hero work and a drive to want to become a good hero. Not to mention he doesn't ignore the fundamentals either. Even without his quirk, Red fares quite well in a fight. Even a lot of powerful quirk wielders become worse than the average fighter when their quirk is erased. Of course, Red was still rough around the edges. If only Aizawa could convince Red to attend UA, he was sure that Red could become a great hero. However, it turns out that convincing Red wasn't needed. Eraserhead, did I not tell you? I'm going to UA this year. Again, Aizawa could only imagine the big dumb grin under that gas mask. See you tomorrow at school. Red used his quirk to latch onto a lamp post, swiftly swinging away. What a problem child. But it did remind Aizawa that tomorrow is the first day of school. Aizawa hoped that he wouldn't have to expel his entire class again. But then again, if Red was in his class, he would have at least one student. Second encounters. Chapter text. First day of school. Izuku stood in front of the gates of UA. The last time he was here was to take the entrance exam. Now he was a student here. Izuku made his way to class 1 degrees Celsius, first year general course. UA was definitely the place to be to see powerful and impressive quirks. Izuku didn't need his analysis quirk to see some of the quirks display. Animal mutation quirks, skin changing quirks, and did that guy just go through that wall? Izuku entered the class. Compared to other hero students in the hall, the quirks in the class weren't as flashy. One kid in particular stood out, however. It was the purple hair who dark bags Izuku met a while ago when fighting the villain with a sand quirk. The seat beside the purple hair kid was free. Izuku took the seat beside him. Izuku didn't have a lot of friends in middle school. Only one if you count Kaken. High school was a place to change that. He wasn't some useless Deku. He was Izuku, Red, a vigilante at night, and a student attending the #1 hero school during the day. Hello, I'm Izuku Midoriya. The boy seemed friendly enough when Izuku saved him, so he definitely thought they could become friends. Hitoshi Shinsu, nice to meet you. What middle school did you go to? Izuku decided to start with small talk to try and get to know Hitoshi. Listen, I'm not here to make friends. I'm here to prove myself and get into the hero course. Hitoshi thought this would shut the green hair boy up, but instead it only seemed to encourage the teen instead. Me too. I heard of cases where students who do well in the sports festival were able to transfer to the hero department. Hitoshi was curious about Midoriya's quirk after learning that their goals were similar, but decided against asking. After all, he didn't want to reveal his own quirk if he didn't have to. Soon the teacher of class 1 degrees Celsius arrived and Izuku and Hitoshi had to stop their conversation. The class was taken to orientations just like every other class except for class 1A. They were missing along with Eraserhead. Izuku was looking forward to seeing Eraserhead in his civilian form. However, it's probably for the best that they didn't meet. At the same time as Izuku was listening to the principal talk at orientations, Eraserhead was keeping an eye out for Red. Aizawa was convinced that Red was a first-year student. He would have definitely recognized his talent if he already attended this school. Although Eraserhead hated to admit it, Red was pretty impressive as a fighter. Maybe a bit rough around the edges, but definitely could hold his own against the stronger third years. Therefore, it's only natural for Red to be enrolled in class 1A. Right. However, he was having doubts. The entire class took too long to realize his presence. If he was a villain, they would have been killed. Not to mention that it was only the first day and students were already starting to fight one another. Another kid was making rude remarks to one of the girls in class. He was definitely getting expelled. Was there hope for any of them? Then came the evaluation. Katsuki Bakugo, why don't you give it a try first? A blonde-haired kid with a scowl stepped up. Could this be Red? The height was pretty similar, and the lack of respect for authority lines up with Red's identity of being a vigilante who does illegal activity. Not to mention the hair was a pretty light color, easy for it to be dyed white or back to blonde. The difference between Red and Bakugo, however, is the quirk. 𝐷𝐼𝐼𝐸. Or maybe it's the anger issues. Some other kids had similarities to Red, but none were close enough to draw a conclusion. Shoto Todoroki had half-white hair. Due to having a hero as a parent, his fighting ability would be better than the majority of the people here. He also seems to have a grudge against using his quirk. Momoye Arazu could use her quirk to produce threads and a white wig, but would it be possible to manipulate the threads the way Red does? Achako Yuraku was also suspicious. She could have used a support weapon to shoot threads and then her zero-gravity quirk to manipulate it. Aizawa decided to stop being suspicious about each and every student in this class. At this rate, everyone and anyone could be Red. How would Aizawa even know if Red was telling the truth about attending UA? Aizawa looked at the students completing each exercise. If Red was here, he wouldn't be doing as terrible as these students. Eraserhead watched as Bakugo argued and yelled, and his mind made more perverted remarks towards the girls. Eventually, the apprehension test came to a conclusion. Minta, last place. You're expelled. The rest of you can go for lunch. Eraserhead could hear the cries and wails of the student. He simply turned around and left. Even if Minta didn't come last, he still would have been expelled. He simply didn't have what it takes to be a hero. Izuku headed to the cafeteria. His new friend, or his hopefully new friend, already left Izuku behind to eat by himself. It wasn't like eating alone was new to Izuku anyway. Izuku sighed before lining up for food. At least seeing lunch rush as the school's cafeteria hero made him feel a bit better. Katsuden consumer. A monotone voice came from behind. Izuku turned around to look behind him. Shoto, what are you doing here? I mean, of course you're a student here. That's obvious. Why else would you be here? I mean, being a teacher is also a reasonable answer, but considering your age, I doubt that would be the case. There's others waiting in line behind you. A voice sounded behind Izuku from another student. Ape. All right. Izuku grabbed his tray of food and got out of the way of others. Shoto and Izuku sat beside each other. It was a nice surprise to see the split boy hair again. After getting a new identity as Red, training, and preparing for exams, Izuku didn't have a chance to contact Shoto. That paired with Izuku being nervous to contact a friend. Later, Izuku and Shoto were joined by Momoye Hirose and Masahiro Oitra. They talked about what class they were in and how a boy was expelled on the first day of class. Serves him right. I swear I saw him loitering outside the girls' changing room trying to sneak a peek. Hirose seemed passionate about the topic. A couple of others girls from class came to rant with Hirose. However, Izuku's eyes were more drawn to another pair of red eyes. Katsuki Bakugo. Right, it was only natural for Kaken to go to UA. He never seemed to meet Izuku's eyes. He probably wasn't paying attention to anyone else. In his words, as he would say, "Who cares about these damn extras?" Earth to Midoriya. Oidro waved his tail in front of Izuku's face. While Izuku's focus was placed back on Shoto and the others. I asked what your quirk was. Everyone else already talked about theirs. Hirose repeated her question. Oh, I'm quirkless. Izuku revealed he was quirkless before he mentally processed how his new friends would process it. At least he didn't say he was also trying to get into the hero course. All Izuku got was looks of pity and consoling words before Hirose quickly tried to change the subject. Lunch was over after that and the rest of his classes also finished. Izuku was surprised with how normal the classes were. Normal compared to the hero courses. Izuku knew that Aizawa has previously expelled an entire class before, but after meeting him as Red he found it hard to believe Aizawa would expel an entire class. When Izuku left school he was exhausted, meeting a lot of new people and having to become accustomed to a new school. and new classes. It could also be from running into Kakin or almost having a heart attack when he made eye contact with Aizawa. Izuku decided not to go out as Red today. His sleep has suffered enough. Instead, Izuku thought back to Sodo. He was pleasantly surprised with the reunion and much-needed get-together, but it also reminded him that he needed to hang out with another friend, the blue-haired teen from the arcade. Izuku decided to make a detour from school to the internet cafe. 𝗵𝗲 was pissed. The dumb NPC he tasked with infiltrating Class 1A was a complete failure, more caught up in his own narcissism than doing what he's tasked to do. 1A displayed all their quirks and their quirks were listed, yet he remembers nothing. Useless. 𝗵𝗲 smashed the keys on his keyboard. Gaming was probably the only thing that could keep 𝗵𝗲 from disintegrating that dumb, blonde hello again. Another NPC. 𝗵𝗲 turned to look at a piece of broccoli. Izuku smiled nervously, now realizing that he was bothering the blue-haired teen in the middle of his game and when he was in a bad mood. Haha, if you're busy you can continue your game. I was just a sit. 𝗵𝗲 pulled Izuku into the chair beside him. Crushing an NPC in games always made him feel better, even if his opponent was absolutely terrible at playing. Another lost for you, Izuku. 𝗵𝗲 had a grin that normal people could only describe as menacing and creepy. However, in the eyes of Izuku, he was glad his friend was cheering up. After 𝗵𝗲 won another time, he started to get hungry. Want to get something to eat? Yeah, I think I'm a little tired of you beating me up, Izuku replied. Both of them paid and left. 𝗵𝗲 started walking to the bar. It was like a habit he picked up when wanting a free meal. But the dilemma of bringing the broccoli had served as a headache since the bar doubled as the League of Villains hideout. Well, in the worst-case scenario, he could always disintegrate him. Right, I don't think you ever told me your name. The green cloud spoke. Shigaraki, I'm Izuku Midoriya. I'm glad I was able to find you. By the way, where are we headed? The green air Midoriya seemed to be courageously stupid. We're almost there. Turning the last corner, Midoriya and 𝗵𝗲 made their way to the bar and entered. Kurogiri, like always, was running the bar. The place was always kept quite clean and the usual customers made the bar feel both homey and lively. Taking a seat at the bar, Midoriya followed. Kurogiri. Food. Kurogiri turned to start preparing something, but in Izuku's view he felt like the black like mist was rolling his eyes at the teen. Izuku looked around for a menu but couldn't find anything. Shigaraki, what dishes do they serve here? Oh, just tell him what you want, we have ingredients for everything, and if we don't. Almost like it was on cue, a couple of sandwiches came out of a black misty portal and fell in front of Shigaraki. Kurogiri can teleport it. Shigaraki made his signature creepy smirk. Then a katsudon for me, please, Izuku called out. So did you finally start to hate heroes or something? Shigaraki finally said between bites. No, I still like them. Some more than others. Whatever, as long as you don't like that All Might freak. I don't. He's a pain in my butt. He's the one bad part about my school. As Izuku answered, a bowl of katsudon teleported in front of him. School. Shigaraki took another bite of his sandwich. He's teaching there. Not my class though, Class 1A, which I guess is Izuku's rambling was cut short. All Might. You go to UA. I mean you wouldn't happen to know the students in Class 1A and know all of their quirks and names. 𝗵𝗲 wasn't exactly subtle with his means of getting information, but Izuku wasn't that surprised by the question. After all, people are usually curious if you are aiming to become a hero or something when attending UA or any hero school for that matter. But if Izuku did find 𝗵𝗲 suspicious, he would never pass up the chance to talk about heroes or quirks. Well, it's only the first day so I don't know everyone. Plus it's not my class, but I do know Shoto Todoroki. Izuku went on to tell Shigaraki about Todoroki's quirk as well as his weaknesses and strengths, the worst and best quirk matchups. However, Todoroki wasn't the only one with exposed secrets. Yaoyorozu, 𝗲𝗏, and Kakin also had their quirks exposed as Izuku went full-on fanboy about the quirks. What about All Might? His class schedule? Izuku stopped to think for a moment. I don't. Again, I'm not in the hero course, but All Might. Izuku was thinking about his encounter with All Might. All Might was growing weaker and it showed in the news articles containing him. He could only stop villains if it could be done in a short period of time. Him going to UA to teach was probably to hide that the symbol of peace was slowly losing strength. Never mind. Shigaraki and Izuku talked for a while longer before Izuku decided to head home. Shigaraki was an interesting guy, especially when compared to the heroes and soon-to-be heroes that Izuku was surrounded by during the day. Izuku wanted to think the best of people, but there was definitely some shady business that Shigaraki was involved with. But Izuku still thought that Shigaraki was a good guy and friend. Midoriya. Shigaraki called out to Izuku before he left the bar. I owe you one. The next day at school, Iwaza was definitely crankier. It was probably due to all the reporters outside trying to get a glimpse of All Might or some other scoop about the #1 hero. Izuku passed Iwaza in the hall without him having the slightest idea that Izuku was Red. Izuku was building the courage to identify himself as Red and register a quirk. He had hoped that he could join the hero course after coming out as Red. After all, it was still early in the year, and if 𝐒𝐴ZA really expelled a student on the first day of class, then there was space for him to join. The more Izuku thought about it, the better it sounded. He definitely had what it took to be in the hero course. Izuku sat in class beside Hitoshi. High school was no different than middle school. No saving lives, no interesting classes, and no heroes. Izuku felt like he could hear faint explosions coming from Class 1A, where they probably had some practice rescue mission or sparred against one another. The teacher in the front of Izuku's class paid little to no attention to Izuku, the quirkless kid in the back of his class. Izuku opened his notebook and started to think of the best way to enter Class 1A. If he asked 𝐒𝐴ZA, he would definitely pull some strings for him, or at least give him the opportunity to prove himself. As for his identity, he should register a quirk soon. The rest of class was boring, and with nothing to do, Izuku felt his eyelids droop and become heavy. Izuku assumed that his late nights of being a vigilante finally caught up to him. Oriya, Midoriya. A shake to Izuku's shoulder jolted him awake. The bell rang. Hitoshi finished his sentence, then got up to leave. Izuku looked around at the other students all getting up for lunch and packing their bags. Izuku was a bit disoriented before realizing that he fell asleep in class. Oh, thanks Hitoshi. Izuku tried to call out to Hitoshi, but the purple-haired teen already left the classroom. Izuku sighed and tried to make his way to lunch, but suddenly felt a tug on his shoulder. Go. You're Izuku Midori, you're right. Izuku looked over his shoulder at a familiar face. It was the blue-haired kid with glasses who helped him save that girl at the entrance exams. Yes, follow me to the office. The student moved his hands in a chopping motion before turning to lead Izuku to the office. Office, like the principal's office. What for? A billion thoughts ran through Izuku's head. Did they find out about his identity as Red? Was it something he did? Izuku had a list of reasons going through his mind of the reason why he would be sent to the office. But soon enough all would be revealed as they entered the office. There was a large desk in the middle of the office. At the desk sat a small rat bear, and beside stood All Might, but unlike his usual appearance as the symbol of peace, he instead stood as his skinny form. Midoriya, I'm sure you're wondering why we've called here, especially this early in the school year. The principal's whiskers twitched. Izuku said nothing and waited for the principal to continue. Seeing how Eraserhead wasn't here, he assumed that his identity wasn't revealed. Midoriya, it has come to our attention that you have been telling other students your quirkless status. Midoriya cringed. It was always about not having a quirk. Izuku thought about what it could be this time. Pity, disdain. Yes, that's correct. Izuku mustered. And on your file it also says you're quirkless. Yes, that's correct. But Midoriya, Ida has brought it to our attention that you've told him differently. Izuku was lost for words. According to Ida, you helped him a lot in getting the top score in the entrance exams, where you told him what the exam was and that he should pay extra attention to the student Ochako Uraraka due to a mishap that was going to happen. Oh, that's... Izuku's lies were catching up to him. But it was easy to fix. It just required Izuku to change some of his future plans and maybe a couple redos. I actually found out about my quirk recently. I just wanted to be absolutely sure what kind of quirk it was before registering it. Nezu's whiskers twitched again. Well, it's not good to have an unregistered quirk. We should get this on your record as soon as possible. I hope you are aware that it's quite a painless process to update your quirk. It happens all the time to many people. But we do need you to explain your quirk for us. Well, Izuku started. As Ida may have told you, my quirk involves foresight. It's an active quirk. What I can know is linked to my sleep. Izuku finished explaining his fake quirk. It wasn't completely made up. It's close to the truth. Izuku also didn't want to give out too many details about his quirk since he may want to change it in the future if the circumstances call for it, and so the principal can't poke holes in his made-up quirk. It doesn't seem you know a lot about your quirk yet. Why don't you give us a demonstration? A demonstration? Like sleep here, right now? Yes, to register your quirk it would be best to see a demonstration of it. So you want me to just lay on the floor here and use my quirk? The principal nodded to Izuku. Izuku looked around to see if anyone else found the weirdness in the situation. Could anyone sleep with All Might, a student, and the principal in the same room? Right, let me just go to the bathroom before I sleep. Izuku quickly took his leave. Izuku used the excuse to redo the day. Running to the top of the building, Izuku was about to leap but instead stopped when something caught his eye. The front gates of the school were wide open and the reporters from this morning flooded into the school. Even from the top of the school, Izuku could hear the noise from both the reporters and students. Couldn't Izuku just have one calm day? Or at least one where he didn't have to die? With that last thought, Izuku jumped. Midoriya. With a gasp, Izuku woke up, startling Hitoshi. Whoa, the bell rang. Izuku turned his head towards Hitoshi. Thanks, Hitoshi. Izuku smiled at him. In response, Hitoshi simply nodded and turned to head out of the class. Izuku took a deep breath and headed out of the classroom. He almost immediately felt his shoulder being grabbed. You're Izuku Midori, you're right. Izuku looked over his shoulder at Ida. The principal wants to see me, right? Ada looked a bit surprised. Why yes, that's correct. Izuku and Ada both headed over to the office. Midoriya, I'm sure you're wondering why we've called here especially this early in the school year. The principal's whiskers twitched. Actually, I'm not. Oh, the principal's whiskers twitched again and All Might in his shrunken form tensed a bit. I can guess that Ada told you what happened at the entrance exam and it's true. I do have a quirk, but it manifested quite late. In fact, it only manifested at the entrance exam. That's part of the reason I decided to switch from the hero course to the general one. Izuku appeared confident but in reality was stressed about talking out of his ass. Nonetheless, he continued, I wanted to completely know about my quirk before registering it. There was silence in the air. Time seemed to go slowly as Izuku waited for the principal's response. Well Midoriya, it appears that you already have a good control of your quirk and it should be registered as soon as possible. We can register your quirk for you after you give us some more information about the nature of your quirk. The principal turned to Ada. Ada, why don't you enjoy the rest for your lunch? Ada bowed and took his leave. Izuku spoke about his quirk, where he described his quirk as a foresight quirk that sometimes triggered when he slept. The answer seemed good enough for Nedu. Nedu started on the paperwork and registered the name as Foreseeing Dreams. Nedu and Izuku went back and forth before finishing up their conversation. Thank you, Midoriya. That's all for your quirk registration. Feel free to enjoy the rest of your lunch. Oh, why yes. Thank you. Oh, one more thing, Principal Nezu. Yes, Midoriya. In my dream I also saw the news reporters outside break into the school. Unfortunately, Izuku's warning didn't give the rat or the rest of the school enough time to prepare. They couldn't find what was wrong with the security system and the students weren't prepared for the sudden chaos. Thankfully, after an hour or so the whole ordeal was dealt with and school ended. When Izuku got back home he was exhausted. He had a plan of revealing his identity as Red, register his quirk, and get into the hero class, but then had his plan ruined by the principal and the blue-haired glasses-wearing teen. Not to mention the chaos of dying and the reporters flooding the school. Despite everything that happened, Izuku went out as Red that night. Izuku was a bit too tired to find any real threats or villains. He mostly wanted to swing from his red threads. Feeling the cool night breeze and distress, Izuku swung up onto a roof and took a look at the view. This night was particularly clear and he could see every star in the sky. Since he had a moment alone, Izuku decided to look at the new quirk he got earlier that day. He pulled out his phone's camera. Taking a look at the reflection above his head, he saw his new quirk that allowed the user to create a short blinding light. Izuku decided to call it Stun Grenade for now. He didn't want to use the quirk and draw attention to himself right now, and rather than spend time on fancy names for his quirks, he thought a better use of his time would be to come up with how he could get into the hero course since his original plan was no more. Aizawa would have definitely let him into the class, especially after Mineta was expelled. However, now that the school made him register a foresight quirk, he wouldn't be able to register a quirk that aligns with his identity as Red. Sure, it's not uncommon to have two quirks, but Red has definitely used more than a few during his fights. While Izuku was pondering, an idea suddenly came to his head. But before he could think it through, he heard someone landing on the building behind him. Red, I swear when I'm trying to find you, you're nowhere to be found. Izuku turned to see Eraserhead behind him. You were looking for me, Eraserhead. I'm flattered. Izuku responded, smirking under his mask. I'll cut to the chase, Red. I talked it over with the principal of UA. He agreed to accept you into the hero's course through my recommendation. Of course, granted you pass the tests, have the correct paperwork, and stop all vigilante activities as Red. Aizawa has been trying to get Red to be part of his class in Class 1A, and honestly, it sounded like a good deal. Previously, Izuku would have leapt at this opportunity to join Class 1A. But now that his quirk is registered as Foresight Quirk and not one related to his threads or any other quirks he's shown in public makes it difficult. However, not impossible. I want to become your student, Eraserhead. And before you decline. Wait, just like that. You agree? Yup. I had a change of heart. And a change of plans, Izuku thought deviously. Izuku would be able to come up with a solution. There was no way he would let such a good opportunity slip by. Aizawa was still a bit shell-shocked with how easily Red cooperated and a bit suspicious. Nonetheless, he talked to Red about getting some identification, doing some tests, and that he'll give Red more information later about his school transfer. Hand me your phone. Aizawa stuck his hand out. Eraserhead, stealing from me right as I become your student. Izuku responded. It's to give you my phone number. Text me only if it's relevant for the transfer. Somehow both Eraserhead and Izuku knew that wasn't going to happen, but for the sake of convenience and to be able to communicate they exchanged numbers. Finally, Izuku decided to call it a day. He knew tomorrow he would be busy running a couple errands for his new plan. Sneaking back into his room, he peeled off his gas mask and clothes, hiding them under his bed. Turning his hair green again, he slid under the covers of his bed. Usuo Shigaraki. The next day, Izuku was at the bar he previously met Shigaraki at. About that favor, could you by any chance maybe Spit it out, broccoli, Shigaraki said almost in a growl. Shigaraki sat at the bar playing a phone game. Kurogiri slid a glass of Sprite over to Shigaraki. Could you get me facade, please? And maybe some other documents, Izuku quickly said. Izuku swore he almost saw Shigaraki laugh. That's it. Turn your textbook to page 72, Izuku teacher dolefully said. The whole classroom looked like they were zombies except for Izuku. But he wasn't focused on the lecture, he was focusing on another task. What quirk should his second identity have? It was surprisingly easy to get Shigaraki to make fake documents for Izuku. However, there were some other issues before he could get the documents. Shigaraki needed to have a name, an address, pictures, a quirk to register. Izuku pondered what quirk should he put down, and what photo should he use. For the quirk, it was a little more of a headache. The easy solution would be to register his quirk as a combination of thread and touch telekinesis. But there has definitely been reports of him using other quirks like his freeze tag and cube. While it may be easy to pass the pair off as a single quirk, having all four was an issue. The question continued to linger during lunch as well. Todoroki and the others thought that something might have been wrong with Izuku since he wasn't talking about heroes nonstop or something about quirks. They all took glances at Izuku before Yaoyorozu finally asked, Midoriya, is something wrong? Huh, oh yeah, I think I left my textbook in class. I'll be right back. Izuku quickly excused himself. Izuku liked his new friends from Class 1A, but he couldn't get past what they thought of him, or more specifically him being quirkless. Sure, he had a quirk registered now, but never felt the need to mention it to them. To Izuku, it shouldn't matter if he did or didn't have a quirk. Right, Izuku had to shake the feeling off. But while lost in his thoughts, he almost ran into a student. Sorry. Izuku meekly got out. Perfect. You're one of those Class 1A students, right? Come with me. A pink-haired girl with googles on her face pulled Izuku into one of the classrooms. What? I think there's a misunderstanding here. Izuku tried to explain but was interrupted by the pink-haired girl. These are sticky shoes that allow you to walk on walls. Try them. Sure. Izuku walked over to the nearest wall. The shoes seemed like normal black boots with a minimal design on the side. Placing the sole of his shoe to the wall, he could feel the shoe grab hold of the wall. He took his other foot and also placed it on the wall. Hey, it works, Izuku called out as he continued to climb higher up. Finding his balance was a bit weird, but the boots seemed to function as it was supposed to. Of course it does. Now what does one of the top students think? Again, I'm not from Class 1A. Izuku grumbled a bit but then replied. But if I were to guess, this would be for Underground Hero, due to the color and stealth that climbing a wall has. It works great, but it's impractical. If anything, it's more practical than any other weapon I've made. The girl pouted a bit. It's great in theory. Izuku tried to console the girl but continued in his critique. But most underground heroes can jump without making any noise. Or if they really need to, they can scale walls. Most buildings aren't totally flat where it's impossible to climb up the wall. Well duh. The girl slapped herself on the face. I can't believe I missed such a beginner mistake. ARRGGG. Anyway, you sure seem like you know what you're talking about. I hope you can help me in the future with showing off my babies. Izuku choked on his spit. What now? My support weapons, duh. By the way, I'm 𝗵𝗃. I look forward to working with you. Support weapons. Of course. Izuku suddenly realized how he could create his identity. Ice could be his registered quirk and he could pass off his threads as a support weapon. Izuku felt like he finally found the missing piece of a puzzle. He was excited to get back home and finish the rest of his identity.